Hey everybody! Today's video is about gardening and survival craft horror games. If you're interested in any of those, including gardening sims, stick around, you might discover something new to play. Or if you just want to know how to garden in the games I'm going over, I'll be providing a somewhat condensed rundown of how to go about that. And with that said, here are 3 games that I believe have some of the better gardening aspects, mechanics, systems. Yeah, you get what I mean. Which brings me to the first on the list, Project Zomboid. Project Zomboid surprised me with how in-depth its mechanics were and the long list of things you can do. It's not just about battling zombies, you have to make sure you're fed and watered of course, which is pretty standard fare for these types of games. But you also need to treat the various injuries you can get with the correct means. Have a scrape, apply some disinfectant and a clean bandage and you should be fine. But deeper lacerations require stitching and a little more care lest you bleed out or get an infection. There's also mechanics, as in car mechanics. If you manage to find an undamaged car, you will eventually damage it, thus you're going to need to fix it. Not just the cosmetic damage, such as a dented hood or a broken window, but you'll want to keep an eye on the insides as well, such as the engine and even the brake pads. You have the option of establishing a base anywhere you want, be that in an already established building or, my preference, building your own. Though I do recommend you make sure the area is a somewhat safe location. Which is why I chose the lake house for this video, which is from the mod Louisville or Louisville Lake House created by Matryoshka on the Steam Workshop. It's a nice cozy little area far enough away from spawning zombies that protecting your home isn't really an issue. Its first show of safety comes with the issue that it's a bit far from everything else, and it only has a dirt path leading in and out of the area, but that at least can be remedied by laying gravel down, though you're going to need a lot of it. Still, if you plan to make it your main base for a long playthrough, you should get on top of that because after some time, trees and other foliage will begin to grow, making travel much more difficult. The good news is you can farm/garden anywhere, even the concrete jungle. Just make sure to have bags of dirt with you, which you can get by using a shovel to dig and having an empty bag on hand to hold it. You can make that rooftop garden you've always wanted. For now, I'm just using the good old ground since I don't have to worry about zombies trying to reenact Plants vs. Zombies. Hold on though! There are a few things you're going to want to do before you start digging in the dirt like an excited little terrier. At least if you want to make your farming life a little easier. First, pick your plot of land. You don't have to remove the grass from the area, but you can if you want it to look a little cleaner. Or maybe you like that abandoned overgrown look. Who am I to judge? Bonnie. I'm Bonnie, here to judge you. And I am judging you. So go ahead and plot out your rows, or as it's called, furrows. You can make your garden as big or small as you want, just keep in mind that to start, the bigger it is, the more time consuming it will be. You can use your hands, but a trowel or a garden hoe would be a better use to keep from injuring your little delicate hands. I've done a small one this playthrough as I use it to supplement the quarter ton of canned goods I have, and the endless piles of gas station junk food I can't stop eating. Before you plant your seeds, you've got seeds, right?
No.
Well, in case you haven't, you should probably do that. A good place I've found to get these little packets of life-sustaining goodness are hardware stores, and Gigamart. There's also a garden/farm/seed store I came across, but I am unsure of how many are located on the map. Now that you have your seeds, you're thinking you can just plop them in the ground and shove off to loot an entire platoon's worth of weaponry, right? Now that you have seeds, you're thinking you can just plop them in the ground and shove off to loot an entire platoon's worth of weaponry, right? Wrong. Well, you can, but we're talking about farming here, so let's do that. I would recommend you build a few water barrels, which you'll need 4 planks, 4 nails, 4 garbage bags, and a carpentry skill level of 4. Unless your garden is next to a water source, you'll probably be relying on rain more than anything, but they're good to have if you've planted on a dry day, or have a bit of a dry spell. A backup source, if you will. You can fill these by hand, but I would just wait for the rain to fill them up, unless you want that boot camp experience. You do you, boo.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
You could also build a few composters, which you can fill with just about any type of food. It'll make good use of that moldy broccoli you were totally gonna use in a recipe and then promptly forgot about for 3 months. Why do this? Because it'll compost into fertilizer. And fertilizer will cut down on the amount of time it takes your crops to grow, which will make life a little easier. The wiki says it takes about 20 hours off. I haven't done any in-depth testing, but I'm going to assume that's correct. It's gonna take about 2 in-game weeks to actually get any compost, and each bag takes 10% to fill. Once it starts composting, you'll be able to add more food to the box to keep it going if you like. You can also find NPK fertilizer in the world, but it isn't super common, and both work exactly the same. Now that you've got it all set up and ready, go ahead and plant your seed. I should mention that you don't want to plant your crops all in one single mass, lest a sick plant ends up spreading its affliction onto the rest like an elementary schooler with ringworm. Yes, your plants can get diseases. There are 3. Flies, mildew, and mildew's meaner, angrier cousin, devil's water fungus. These diseases can slow growth, cause a smaller harvest, or make the plant require more water than usual. Now, if you're not a dedicated farmer, you can just ignore these. However, if you don't like the potential of a crappy crop, you have options. Insecticide made with water and cigarettes can be used, as you've guessed, to delete those pesky freeloading critters. Mildew cure is made with milk. Yes, milk. Does it make sense? No, but it is what it is. Have those in a gardening spray can and go to town. Not actual town, I mean, you know what I mean. If your farming skill is low, it may be better to either let it go or destroy the crop. It just depends on how bad it is. However, the higher skill will show you more specific information, more importantly, which cure you need and how much of it you'll need. You may have noticed I've only mentioned 2 cures. Yes, that's because devil's water fungus cannot be cured. It is the death knell for your plants. If you've got the devil's fungus, best to burn that with fire. Or, you know, just destroy it like a normie. The wiki says there's a chance to cure it by letting your crop get down to about 10% water for a while, but I'm not sure if that really works, and if it's even really worth it. It's gonna take a few in-game weeks for your crops to be ready for harvest. That's right, farming here is the long game. Feel free to kill some time in your preferred method. You can harvest them as soon as they're ready, but if you're in need for seed, you can wait a few days for them to become seed-bearing, which will net you quite a bit. And there you have it! Now you can enjoy your hard-earned reward by either cooking it like a soft Billy Nancy, or eat it raw like a man! I kid, the cooking mechanic is pretty neat, especially if you get mods to expand it further. The next game on the list, 7 Days to Die. 7 Days to Die shares some similar mechanics to PZ in the same way an apple and an orange are both fruit. While undead roam, it's up to you to stay alive by fighting and surviving. You have hunger and thirst. You have different wounds and sickness to combat. You even have vehicles to manage, though how you go about that is a little different. Let me break it down for you. You build farm plots, and each holds 1 plant. Now these make it so you can place them anywhere, ground or rooftop like the previous game, but you also have the added option of planting underground, provided there's still access to sunlight. However, the amount of rotten flesh and nitrate it takes is a bit of a pain in the beginning. While clay can be obtained by digging up dirt from any biome, rotten flesh can only be found in random containers and the remains that spawn on the map, not from fresh zombies. Likewise, nitrate can also be found in the same places, but it can also be mined in any biome. If you check your map and look for a tiny white square, that's where you'll find your nitrate. So setting up your garden is going to take a little time and a lot of scavenging. Before we move on, let me quickly explain biomes. 7 days works in biomes instead of seasons. You have snowy forest, the desert, the burnt forest, and wasteland. You can think of biomes or zones as leveled areas, with the forest being the easiest and wasteland being the most difficult, at least in terms of enemies. You do have the option to turn off enemy spawning if you're looking for a survive the elements type of playthrough. I like to do this in my single player save sometimes so I can build a nice base without having to worry about zombies destroying it. Back to the plants. The good news is you can farm anywhere. Temperature doesn't affect plant growing, nor does water because, well, apparently plants in 7 days just survive off sunshine, Mountain Dew, and Doritos. Except for mushrooms, they don't even need the sunshine. They are the real chads of this world. So anyway, seeds! You can get these by finding them in random loot, but the best place to find them are from the plant itself, which you'll find most abundantly on farms. All you gotta do is walk right up to them, give them the good old sucker punch to harvest that good, and then you can go into your crafting menu to make them into seed. Note, you can only find hops and coffee in random loot or bought from a trader. They do not grow in the wild.
It's been a real pleasure.
You'll need to find southern farming magazines in the world in order to unlock the ability to turn crops into seeds. They aren't too uncommon, but you'll probably have an even better chance of finding them at Crack-a-Book. Put that in your hotbar and plop them into the plot. In about 2 real-time hours, give or take a few minutes, they'll be fully matured. You can check this by hovering your cursor over the plant, and it'll either show seedling, growing, or just the plant name, which is when it's ready to harvest. If you try before they're fully matured, you'll only get the seed you planted in return. Your living off the land perk level determines how much you'll get per harvest. If you have no perks, you generally get 1 plant. 1 perk, you harvest 2, and it takes 30% less to build farm plots. 2 perks, and you harvest 2 and have a 50% chance to harvest 3, and it takes 50% less to build farm plots. 3 perks, you harvest 3 and have a 50% chance to harvest 4. Remember how I said plants survive off sunshine, Mountain Dew, and Doritos? Well, one of those isn't a lie. So what you're going to want to do is go down to your local 7-Eleven and get a cold 20-ounce Baja Blast. Oh wait, that's my shopping list. Sunlight! These photosynthesis loving freaks require at least a light level of 8. Light levels range from 0 to 15. Different blocks have different light opacities. Which means if you plan to have an indoor or underground garden, you'll have to make sure they still have access to the sunlight. You could build a chimney-like structure to pipe in sunlight, just remember it does have a limited horizontal range. Or you can just make an entire skylight if you wish, just make sure you're using either glass with an opacity of 1, or something that can be used as grating so you don't accidentally fall in. The actual farming aspect may be limited in vanilla, but the creative construction possibilities are pretty cool. Now, there is a popular mod for 7 days called Darkness Falls. It adds and changes a great many aspects of the game, including farming. With the mod installed, you have access to fruit trees on top of the base crops. That's one reason I chose this mod, but the main reason is water. In this mod, your crops actually do need water, and there are a few ways you can go about providing it. I'll link a video that goes more in depth about the water aspect in the description, but here's a quick overview. It's suggested that you build your farms in a 5x5 radius with the center block free for the rain catcher. You want to dig 2 blocks down to place the rain catcher as it spawns a water block on top of it, and you don't want to flood your garden. Doing it this way ensures that plants generally grow at the same rate, and you won't run out of water from too many plants feeding off the same water source, making it run dry. You can do multiples of these, making sure they're about 3 blocks apart from each other so the plants aren't feeding off the wrong water source. If you want a cleaner, more irrigated look, try out the irrigation pipes. Place the irrigation pump next to a water source, be that a naturally occurring one on the map or one you've created. It can be next to it or even inside it. I've found both work. I've placed the plots 1 block away from the pipes, but I believe you can go as far away as 2, but I am not sure on that. You can also run pipes underneath the farm plots, as the direction doesn't matter. Aside from the water aspect, this mod has something called grow lights. It's a light source you can use for your indoor or subterranean gardens. However, these will only work on special crops, which you won't be able to access right away. So if you want that underground crop, you're still going to have to use the sunlight chimney until you're able to craft the underground seeds. To use the grow lights, the plants have to be within 4 blocks of the lamp. It doesn't matter which direction it's facing, as long as it's within range, it will count. You'll also have to use farm plots for these seeds. They won't grow in just dirt. Fruit trees can be placed in the ground though, as they do not require any water. They'll take a while to grow at first, but once they start producing fruit, the time between harvesting won't be as long. Aside from the garden changes, this mod also adds animal traps for meat, fat, and hides, chicken coops for eggs and feathers, and beehives for honey. And yes, you can still disable enemy spawning for this mod if it isn't your jam. If it is, be prepared for those blood moons. This mod will crank them up to 11 once the demons start spawning. If you're interested in this mod, it's available on Thunderstore and Nexus. I can't speak as to the viability of the Nexus version, as Thunderstore is where I got it from, but even if you're hesitant about manual modding, I would still recommend it, as it's quick and easy installation and it adds so much to the game. SCUM. You know the rundown with the similarities, so I don't think I need to go over them again. Instead, we're gonna jump right into the farming. When you're picking a base location for farming, I would suggest somewhere close to a body of water like a lake or river. The beach might work, but I'm not 100% sure if you're able to use salt water on your plants. I know you can't drink it. Well, you can, but you shouldn't. There are wells if you would rather have your base be somewhere else, or can't because the location is taken if you're on a multiplayer server, but they only hold so much water, though if it rains enough it may not matter. Note, I haven't tried farming in the snow biome. Water shouldn't be an issue since you have snow, but I'm not sure how it would affect plant growing. Once you've picked your location, you'll have to place a flag in order to be able to build anything. This will determine the borders of your base. You won't be able to build outside this border, but it's a rather large area. I doubt most people would even fill the area anyway, especially if you have a build limit on. That wasn't necessarily a challenge, but you could take it that way if you want. You can go into your menu via the tab key, then select crafting, and then base building. This is where you'll find all the base items you're able to build. Your engineering skill will determine what's available for you to build. The higher it is, the more options you have. Don't worry though, the garden plots are available even if you're a dum-dum like me and have no skill in engineering yet. So select garden, then press F to place the pivot point. And from there you can drag it out to whatever size you want it to be. When the outline is red, it means you're either too close to something or maybe trying to build over water. In this game, your garden placement is more limited than in the first two because you can only build on the ground. Now that you have your outline placed, you'll need the items to build it with. You can get planks from logs of trees you cut down. You don't need a chainsaw to do this, but I like the chainsaws in this game. The rest of the items can be gotten by scavenging or buying from a trader. Weeds. Not that kind, this kind. You don't want weeds. They're a pain in the ass just like in real life. They slow down plant growth and reduce your harvest. You can get rid of them by hand, but it's faster to use a garden hoe. You can also use weed repellent to keep them at bay for a while, but I've noticed once my plants started growing, weeds didn't seem to be a problem. Next up, fertilizer. There are 2 types in this game and they do vary a little. There's organic, which increases crop growth speed by 25% and increases chance of successful harvest by 5%. And industrial, which increases crop growth speed by 50% and increases the chance of a successful harvest by 10%. Like in most games, you don't have to use it, but you'll definitely want to because growing takes a long time in SCUM. Also, you'll want to refertilize them once they've reached the next growing stage. Seeds. Seeds can be obtained in 3 ways. Find them when scavenging, buy them from a trader, or get them from plants. You don't need to learn anything special to do this. Farms and home gardens are your best bet at finding plants to loot, but not every plant will give you something. Buying them from a trader is the most reliable way to get them. SCUM has the most variety when it comes to crops. I'm actually surprised that a game that isn't focused on farming has this much variety, though it could tie into the robust metabolism system they have. Planting is time consuming, ridiculously so in my opinion. Just about everything to do with your garden takes a lot of time. You can make it faster by having a higher farming level, but if it isn't already high, you'll have to slog through it anyway in order to level it up. I'm told potatoes are your best bet if you want to focus on skill gaining in that area. Next up is watering. I'm using a watering can, but anything that can hold water will do. The maximum water threshold is 4,794 milliliters. If you accidentally water the same place twice, don't worry, you can't overwater your plants, at least not on this version of the game. That's another reason why I suggest building close to water. It's time consuming as it is. Although if you're doing something small, you could grab a couple of gas cans to load up on water so you don't have to make so many trips. You could also just urinate on it, but if you're able to water more than 1 plant with your piss, then something has gone very, very wrong. Stop drinking nothing but cola and energy drinks. Kidney stones are painful. That's a free tip from me. Drink more water and eat less fried foods. Temperature. If you highlight the seed and click Control, it'll give you all the information about its nutrient factors, but more importantly, its ideal growing temperatures. If you have a thermometer and go into first person view, you'll see the temperature of the area in both American and gibberish measurements. I did notice that the temperature was lower in shaded areas. I don't know if that affects the plants or not, so I cut down the trees just in case. My base is pretty close to the mountains, but I can still get pretty high temperatures. I planted a variety of plants from warmest preferred to coldest preferred, and all of them have at least made it to vegetating stage, which means more than likely they'll all grow to full regardless of temperature. It just may take longer or provide a lower yield. Finding information about growth time was a little difficult. SCUM Map says it takes 1 day GT to go from seedling to vegetating. If GT means game time, then that information is wrong because it definitely took longer than 1 game day for that to happen for me. If it doesn't, then what does that mean? All I know is it took a while. This game has the longest growing period for plants than any other game that comes to mind. I don't say this to put you off, only to inform. As long as they have water and sunlight, they should grow. I did a little experiment with speeding up game time to see if it would affect plant growing. I didn't notice a difference, so no, I don't think you can speed up farming by speeding up the game time. I could be wrong, and if anyone knows differently, leave a comment about your experience. Once it's finally time to harvest, you have a chance to get 1 or more produce. There's also a chance you won't get anything. Your farming skill also affects this. I've turned up the ability to get something from the first harvest to 100%. And my skill is set to medium, so you don't need it to be high for it to be viable. And that's pretty much it for plant growing in SCUM. I have to add that the cooking in this game is probably one of the better ones, mostly because it's visually pleasing and there are a wide variety of recipes. All 3 of these games come with high customization when it comes to enemy spawning. You can have 0, a few, a lot, whichever way you want to play, it's there. They're all still in early access, which means some things may change, but they have enough content to have a fun playthrough. If you're a garden/farm sim player, you might want to check these games out if you haven't already. If nothing else, then to fill that time between farm sim releases. And if you're into survival craft, well, you've probably already put hours into these titles, but if you haven't, definitely give them a look. Thank you for watching this video. I decided to try something new and I wanted to put something out there that someone might find helpful. If not for the farming information, then maybe you found a couple new games you'd like to try and never considered before. I hope that I've made it simple and easy enough to understand and haven't bored you with it. If you like this video, let me know by either liking, subscribing, or commenting. If you didn't like it, feel free to give it a dislike. If you'd like to leave me some feedback on what I did well or horrible at, I also welcome that. I would like to make more of these types of videos. If you're a fan of my other content, that hasn't gone away either. I just want to try some new things because I really enjoy making videos. And again, thank you, and have a wonderful day.